Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Sellik the Thunder podcast, episode number 15 now. As we come to you post Glasgow Derby, that's right. I'm not dropping the O. I'm joking. I know Rangers fans click on the go after. Did you see that? Did you see the comments? The last one it was like, "Come on, Ryan, we know you're dying to say it. You know you're dying to say it." But we'll just post Derby anyway, and we'll talk about that and what comes along beside it. Some other news as well that came out last night regarding Scott Brown. We'll talk about some of the managerial options and news that's came out during the week, talk about who's now favourite and all the rest of it. And ultimately, we'll look to have a good time. And we'll talk about the Twitter questions as well at the end of the episode. But I'm joined, as you can see, by only one person today. There's only one man beside me, and that's Mr. Ryn McGinlay. Ryan, you're the only one now that can say that you've not had to drop out or whatever the such, because you've been standing by me this whole time, mate.
No, just eat were calling, but I denied their calls. I've not been answering their calls.
You're a true Sellik man.
I'm here, mate. And I'm always here, mate.
Sound like somebody else, I know. Look, it's something that we can't help sometimes when we've not got three people or whatever, but we'll still have a good one anyway. Kieran's still feeling the let's say the I don't want to say benefits. He's feeling the downside of the derby. Had one drink too many, and I'm sure that we're all kind of trying to move on from it. So you know what, they've drew the long straw. They don't have to. So I guess it leaves it to us. We'll talk about the derby first of all. Let's kick off with that. Celtic won, Rangers won. I've had my say in terms of how we performed and such. We'll come on to a lot more deep conversation as to what it points towards and where we go from it. But Ryan, very quickly. Not very quickly. Take as long as you like, mate. It's only 2 years. What do you make of it? Give us your opinion on the performance there at the weekend.
You know, that's what I helped a couple of months ago. If I was the only one on the podcast, I could have just ranted for an hour about Neil Lennon. But
I know it's like you'd have literally been able to turn our Facebook conversations into one long podcast.
No, mental on it. It's just the apathy's still there. I would say I just feel really tired with the whole thing. Feel tired with the season. They got my attention though. They started really well. The goal was brilliant. Great ball in from Edward, and then see with a great diving header. You don't see enough diving headers nowadays.
Exactly.
Reminded me of like a closer up version of Charlie Mulgrews against Rangers in 2012.
Oh mate, takes me back.
Or the previous iteration of Rangers, as some of the commenters would want me to say. Or half of them would and half of them wouldn't, to be honest.
I know, exactly. It's such a weird divide in the comments, because we've got 50% of folk who are, I don't know quite the exact percentage, we've got half of the folk who are like, you don't stick it to them enough, you don't slag them enough, then you've got the other half who are actually like Rangers fans who want to come over and see a nice, level-headed, unbiased view of things, but we'll say it was. We'll just say it was. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
It was going so well, and then John Joe Kenny forgot that we could kick the ball out for a throw in rather than a corner. I don't know if we were playing for corners or something, but we've not learned this season that we cannot defend corners or set pieces whatsoever. Kenny then loses his man, and we concede a goal, and then it peters out from there. Really, not much happened from there.
I know, it was a weird game.
I know. 60 minutes onwards, we were just
one of those ones where I feel like, of course, I feel like I'm not over exaggerating and saying, and I think most people are actually in agreement, Celtic were probably the better team over the course of the 90 minutes. I feel like we had the better share of the chances. But the same issues just keep flagging up. That's the worrying part for Celtic. First 5 or 10 minutes, I thought we were quite slow, but Rangers also, I think you could see the effects of them perhaps playing midweek. The fact that they were kind of making a couple of changes and just off the back of European exit. You could see that there, but we never took advantage of the first 5-10 minutes. I still felt we were a bit slow off the mark, out the gates, And then I was very happy with what we've seen. But as you said, that the Kenny situation, and he's got to be somebody we'll come on to talk about a lot more in depth, because I guess we'll talk about loan players, because I think the two key guys to talk about in this game is probably El Yunusi and Kenny. So we'll come on to talk about them a lot more in depth. But, for all the chances that we make, we let these stupid moments determine the outcomes of games for us. And that's the frustrating thing. John Kennedy will be looking at that. Could have been a really good, I think we're all in agreement he shouldn't have the job. It could have been really good indication what to expect with him in the job. But it's just the same errors from what we had with Lennon, isn't it? Defensive mishaps and not being critical enough moving up the field.
Yeah, Lennon was a massive problem, but I would say the team's a massive problem of this season as well. It's the most important part. We seem to be making the same mistakes as we were January, February time,
Mm-hmm.
November, December, January, February time, you could say.
Let's just narrow it down to August through now.
August, honestly, I could just rhyme off the calendar.
Aye.
And you could mention mistakes because it all started the second game of the season against Kilmarnock, which was a complete nightmare as well. But aye, it's just been a nightmare season. That mistake from Kenny, and he makes a mistake with the corner as well. It's just a nightmare, and it shows that even these loan players are still reverting to these problems that the whole team has had. Yeah. I mean, he's only played, 9-10 games now, you would say?
Exactly. He's played a fraction compared to a lot of people.
I know. But on the plus side, you could probably say that Laxalt had one of his best games in a Celtic top the other day as well. Yeah. So, mental.
It's annoying. Moving forward up the park, I think Elyounoussi, as I said, will come on to played really, really well. His link up with Edouard, I thought was really good. In fact, I thought that the two of them played some tasty stuff. I liked Edouard's kind of movement in the final third between the playing in the middle. He drifted out left, and that helped Elyounoussi at times. It allowed Elyounoussi to drift around a little bit, and it looked really good. And for once this season, it looked as though there was actually a decent enough partnership within the final third between players. Because I thought, for as much slack as he's getting, I don't think Christie was incredibly bad. I think that it looked in the final third that we actually had a clue of what we were doing. But the problem is how clinical this team is at the minute. Edouard could have scored 4 or 5 goals in the game. Like, the chances he had and wasted were very un-Edouard-like. Usually he gets those chances and he takes them. Edouard, I mean, we had this conversation on TSF today. Morelos' goal, for as much as Celtic were very poor in the build-up and allowed it to be easy done for him, was a very Morelos-esque goal. No time to think about it. Gets in the right place at the right time, very instinctive. And that's what Morelos likes. Whereas Edouard, it seems like Edouard likes time. He likes having the ball. He likes creating something for himself. And he had that. But every time he had it, he was shooting down the neck of Alan McGregor. And for as good as McGregor is, he made his job very easy at the weekend. The prime example when he goes down, though, of the biggest chance, if he shoots that first time, we're up 2-0, and at that point, I don't think there's any way back for Rangers. So Edouard's got to look at all those chances he missed at the weekend. He must be kicking himself, man.
Absolutely. I think he's had that problem all season, really. Sometimes he takes one too many touches, and then the next time he doesn't take enough touches, or he doesn't pass. You saw that with the Sorrow incident a couple of weeks ago as well. I thought McGregor had a massive chance too that he could have squared it to Edouard. That was a tap-in.
Yep, that's right.
It's just these sort of things. Like, when you're flying, you don't really think about these sorts of things, but when you're in a rut that we've been in for the past 2-3 months, they seem to be coming back to cost us every single time. And if you don't take your chances on one end, another team will take their chance on the other end. Morelos loves a scrappy goal. That's what he's based his whole game upon. He can score screamers, but he scores a lot of tap-ins. And
he's very much a striker, like a very old school striker. Right place, right time, instinctive finishing. And he's not someone who you kind of associate with carrying the ball. You associate him with scoring goals.
No, he likes to post up to his man, hold the ball up, and get other people into the game. I think he totally fits Scottish football. I know he's been up and down with his sort of goal scoring tallies this season, but he really does fit Scottish football in terms of the physicality of it, puts his body about. And I feel like that's what we should have had with Ayeti this season. He has shown wee glimpses in a couple of games, but it's not really happened. Wasn't even on the bench at the weekend, so we don't know where he stands there.
As the game petered out, well, of course, we've spoke very heavily about the first half here and the chances that Celtic could have had. I mean, I'm just keep thinking to myself, if we do go 2-0 up, which I feel we should have, I'm not saying it was guaranteed it's a win. We know how good Rangers are now. We can't underestimate them. They can very easily pull it back. This whole sort of attitude of the game could change. But we were on top, man. I felt like we won the game. We went up 2-0. But the second half, the same frustrations once again come out. And this is where Kennedy doesn't help himself. For as much as we know, and we've voiced so many times that we don't want Kennedy as the manager next season, he doesn't do himself any favours. The guy who was managing the team and the tactics of the team like we were playing for extra time. We've got all those players in the bench. And yeah, I think the bench, to an extent, was sort of uninspiring. They're players who we know are good, but haven't been there this season. But you still expect him to turn around and make a sub earlier on in the game. And what he does, he was doing the old Lennon stuff and wait until the very end of the game to make the changes.
I thought it was even worse than Lennon, I'll be honest. The timing of some of the subs, 74, 75 minutes.
Aye.
I mean, you're bringing on Sorrow after 88 minutes. What is he going to do? And Griffiths, to be fair, I'm not the biggest fan of Griffiths, I'll be honest. I think he's been a complete liability this season. But what is he going to do in 2 minutes?
Yeah, but I still remember my dad screaming at the telly about that. 2 minutes, what's anybody made in 2 minutes, you know?
But it's just common sense. What is somebody going to do in 2 minutes? Ronaldo or Messi would struggle to make an impact in 2 minutes. I'm not comparing.
No, of course, no. But we understand. I understand completely what you mean. I understand completely what you mean.
Although certain elements of our support would say otherwise, they seem to see him as a sort of godlike figure.
I know. No, TK could do anything.
No, well, I know TK gets away with everything, but Edwards had so much stick this season, despite being a top goal scorer again. But no, I'm not gonna get too much into the whole Griffiths thing. He shouldn't be there next season.
We come on with 2 minutes to go. It annoys me because, and this isn't me launching a sort of personal attack on Griffiths. I'll ultimately revert back to the tactical naivety that I'll say with the time of the substitutions. But with 2 minutes left in the clock, for me, and this is just probably coming from a guy who's more biased towards giving the other guys chances, but you've got Kamara sitting there, man, who's actually played a little bit of football. He got that start against Aberdeen. He's also been probably working a lot harder than Griffiths in terms of trying to keep a place in the team this season. You know, Griffiths had chance after chance after chance and seems to throw it away. If you're bringing anybody on with 2 minutes to go, I would be wanting to give it to Patrick Kamara and give him that chance. And I know that kind of works. It's kind of a double-edged sword because you look at Kamara, if he comes on, he does something, then we all get this sort of opinion of him. He's great, he's going to do this. But then at the other time, if he doesn't come on, then it's a continuous. So what does he add? What does he do? He's done nothing. So it's a bit hard for him. But I don't know. I just look to Griffiths coming on at the 88th minute, and I feel bad for Griffiths because, as I'm saying, I'll reiterate, I think that a sub at that point in the game when we are chasing it is just pointless. Like, why leave it that long? But Griffiths, of all people, I just feel like it could have been Kamara. It could have been something a bit more fresh, a bit more beneficial to someone like Kamara.
Yep. Griffiths has only scored 2 more goals this season than Kamara.
Yep.
Which is mental to think, considering the amount of game time that each have had. In fact, it might not even be that much. It might only be a couple of hundred more minutes, considering the way Griffiths has been in and out of the season. But, I mean, you say the thing about working harder. Kamara did work harder over lockdown. Yep. That's a fact. He went and learned English over lockdown to acclimatise to his new team because he was in the worst sort of position coming into the team in January because he was only there for like a month, 2 months, and then the league was curtailed. So, I mean, he's really bust a gut to try and get into the team.
And he also came back a lot fitter and a lot strong. Like we've seen apparently buffed up a bit. Well, not apparently, we all seen he buffed up a bit. Apparently his speed was better, his fitness levels were better. Whereas on the other side of that, you've got Griffiths, who apparently his fitness was worse. There was photos of him picking up kebabs and all the rest of it, and people wanted him out the team. So, you know, there is a clear complexion, a completely different complexion to how both have kind of worked on themselves this season.
Yeah, absolutely. It just annoys me. I personally, I made it quite clear on Twitter in September, October. Or was it even September, October? It was August, actually. It's kind of weird the way the seasons went. Like, we were sort of talking about pre-season in August and that.
Yeah.
But I was saying Griffiths should have got the book chucked at him for coming back in that state. Especially the way Lennon was speaking about him as well. Yeah. That was when we were all
because a lot of people are quick to forget that it's not just fans who are like wanting Griffiths out here and all the rest of it. It's not just because of a weird biased opinion or anything like that. The managers have came out and commented on it firsthand that they've not been fit, they've not been good enough. And, you know, Neil Lennon at the end of the day was the one that said, "You're not travelling with us over to France." It was Lennon that made that decision. It wasn't the fans that made that decision.
Yep. The problem was that he went back in that 2 weeks later. I remember he said, "Oh, he's been training brilliantly, this and that." It didn't seem as if there was a sort of consequence to his actions. It seemed as if maybe he put in work for 2 weeks and then everything was all rosy again. I think maybe that was a problem with Lennon in a longer term. The fact that a lot of players didn't really know where they stood with him at all. One week he would say one thing and then the next week he would say something else. So, I mean, that's another problem that the players could have faced. But no, it was a shambles him coming back like that. I mean, looking at it now, it's March and he can't start a game or finish a game or whatever.
I was going to say it feels like it. This is just this. Honestly, this season has felt like one long pre-season. Like that's honestly what it's felt like. It feels like we've never got out of that pre-season mindset, and that's been obviously most evident in the fitness and the fatigue of the players. That has been where it's most evident. But we'll come back to the game here now. Of course, game finishes. It's 1-1. I very quickly want to touch on, Ryan, because I should have asked this as kind of the opening question. But it just never had that same feel as a derby usually does it? Because I'm not to take away for a second. I wanted to beat them. Of course I did. You always, no matter what the circumstances, you want to fucking beat Rangers. That's, at the end of the day, the most important part, getting that win. You want to beat your rivals. You want to have the bragging rights. We all know how important that is to beat them. And kind of with the way the seasons went, you almost want to beat them in a way just to have a bit of joy. But there was something around this game when you looked at the bigger picture, knowing that it meant nothing in regards to where this would change the league going. Or even us, I mean, what would it have changed the gap from 20 to 17 points? And the big picture of things, it wasn't a game that you weren't entitled to be excited about, I could say.
It's very much a shrug of the shoulders as it will be until the rest of the season. There's no sort of, I don't really have sort of an interest in the season anymore. I've lost. I'm watching Celtic out of habit now rather than expecting anything, getting excited about anything else. I mean, I got up at, because I watched the UFC on Saturday night, so I got up at like 10 to 12 on Sunday.
I got up at 11 o'clock and I was like, oh, fuck, it's Derby.
Usually you'd be up about 10, 11 o'clock, you'd be cracking open a beer or something, although not me recently, I've been cutting down on that.
Straight edge, mate.
Which is mental, because this season's been terrible, so I thought I would
that. Drowning the sorrows.
I've just been binging on podcasts instead of the booze, so So I missed the first 3 minutes of the game. I was just quite laboured in my approach and going down and watching the game. I just wasn't that bothered, to be honest. Yeah. And that's the worst thing. It's worse than being angry about Celtic. It's not being bothered about Celtic that concerns me the most about how I'm feeling towards the club. I just hope they go and change that with some of the appointments in the next couple of weeks. Yeah,
we're going to come on to what the Derby performance kind of signals in the terms of next season and what it kind of indicates. And we'll talk about those two players, as I said, in a moment in particular. But it's like we both know fine well, and I'll reiterate for anybody who doubts it for a second by saying that it wasn't an exciting derby or anything. You know, we love Celtic with all our hearts. It's a team we support, and you want to watch them with joy every week. But it is now at that point this season when you want it to be done. I want the excitement to be back in, because I'll guarantee you right fucking now, when the first derby of next season kicks off, I will be buzzing. I'll be so excited, and that will feel like a derby. But right now, these ones are just like, well, the only thing that was there, the only thing that's still, and we've still got one small chance of doing it, the only thing that's there is to stop their invincible season. But even at that, it's hardly much to fucking shout about with how bad we've been. I feel like if we won at the weekend, you know, it was all very well and good turning around going, get it up, you're no fucking invincible. But you'd have some cheek, you know, you have a brass neck for fucking celebrating that with how bad we've been. We're 20 points behind. So I just want this season to come to an end so I can feel the excitement again, and feel the levels that I should be feeling as a Celtic fan. But I can't help that. That's human emotion. It's not like I've got an on and off button for when I want to be as excited or whatever, or it's encouraged for a derby. You know, it comes to you on an emotional and a natural level. And it's just not there at the minute. We need something to be sort of revitalised with, and we need that very, very soon. So in terms of next season, Ryan, did you pick up anything from the weekend that was a good indication of what to expect next season, or do you think it is very much still a kind of work in progress, and this won't have much to do in terms of where we go now as a club?
It's difficult to say because we don't really have anything set in place apart from the new CEO coming in, Dominic Mackay. Obviously, I hope he'll be watching the games, and I hope he'll be looking at certain things that he could maybe come in and improve on. I mean, it's just John Kennedy seems to just be doing a job until the end of the season. Let's not have any nightmares. Let's just get going with this season, get on with it, and just get it finished rather than trying to impose his own style. I think he knows himself he won't get the job. I mean, it's kind of obvious now with all the rumours going about certain managers that he just will not be considered. I mean, I know he's unbeaten just now, but it's 2 draws and a win. That's still not really good enough.
And 2 of the draws, one of the draws being a performance we couldn't score in 27 attempts at Tannadice is not exactly compelling statistics.
2 goals in 3 games.
Yep.
That's
It's not Sellik, is it?
Really not good enough. It's not good enough at all. I mean, you look at the amount that we've spent on strikers when you think about 9 million for Edward, 3 million on Klimala, 5 million on Ayeti, and we can only get 2 goals in 3 games.
Yep.
Not really good enough.
I think that the most annoying, I'm not reading too much myself. I'm personally not too bothered about the weekend in terms of what it means for next season. Mostly because you can look at a lot of the star performers from the weekend there, and the majority of them won't be there next season. Laxalt, who I thought was one of the best players in the park, will not be there next season. El Yunusi, slim chance he'll be here next season, unless Celtic want to break the bank and pay a bit of money for him. So El Yunusi won't be there. Edouard, for as poor as he was with his finishing, still one of the better players, he won't be there next season. Scott Brown, who actually I thought was one of the better players in the park at the weekend and had a decent game, doesn't look like he'll be there next season. McGregor, no guarantee he'll be there. I'm looking into this year retirements, perhaps going to enter Milan. Not a guarantee McGregor will be here next season. All these players who I think had good games at the weekend, that's just something. That's something there. Of course, you've got Stephen Welsh, who I think will be here, but the majority of them won't be here next season. So I don't think there's much of it. There's any reason at all. And of course, the main one, John Kennedy won't be manager next season. So I don't think there's any point in looking at that game at the weekend and going, that gives me hope for next season. At the end of the day, we're still not won a derby game this season, right?
I know.
Just sad, isn't it?
I'm trying to think of the last time we won one. Was that the?
It would have been its final. Cup final. That was. We hadn't scored a goal against Rangers in over a year, until obviously Sunday there, which is crazy, absolutely crazy.
That is mental, isn't it?
So I don't know what you exactly take from. I mean, for anybody who thinks that a draw indicates a good season next season or gives you hope, we need a lot more than a fucking draw. A positive performance with a draw doesn't indicate anything. Right now, Rangers are going to be, according to the bookies, they will be favourites next season, and that's for a reason. So, we need to see that change. We need to see it start now. Let's talk about very quickly the 2 lone players who are most on the lips as we talked about the football there. We'll talk about first John Joe Kenny, someone who's been kind of quietly impressing me over the course of his first few games, but the weekend took a lot of stick, Ryan. Of course, largely at fault for the goal conceded. In fact, you could say entirely at fault, as you've covered. Was that a performance that you think does write him off, or do you have faith that he now has another derby game to turn it around and another 5 games to go? Should fans be a bit more reserved in their judgment, or do you think that he has shown that perhaps he's not quite good enough?
It's a bit of a weird one because you need to think what the Everton value their player is, because I think that'll determine if we're in for him or not. If this is just a loan to sort of fill in the gap until the summer because Frimpong left, then we won't be going in for him in the summer. I think we could do better, if I'm being perfectly honest, if we do our scouting correctly. But there could be a better option down south, like maybe an up and coming right back. I mean, you look at the job that Brighton have done. Would you call it scouting Lamptey from Chelsea?
Lamptey, yep.
I mean, these players are out there, and maybe Man City's under 23s have a right back that we need to know about.
Well, certainly getting the guys in to have a look at them, to say the least. That if the rumours are to be believed.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed for that anyway. I
just feel that I can understand why people were so frustrated with Kenny at the weekend, because, as I said, you want to beat Rangers. Ultimately, I want to beat Rangers every single time we play them. Every time I watch one of the games, I want us to beat them, no matter what the circumstances are, even if it is a kind of dead rubber game, because it means nothing in the big picture. So I can understand why people are frustrated that his kind of poor decision-making got in the way of perhaps beating them. But I don't know. I feel like some of the abuse is a bit, I don't know, overdone. I feel like, he's had that kind of slip up there. But I've been impressed with what I've seen both defensively and moving forward with Kenny in every other game so far. Everybody's entitled to a slip up. And of course, you don't want it to be in that game. And I don't think it's excusable just to say, oh, well, it happens, so we need to let it happen there. I just feel like that he now has time to prove us wrong. And of course, as you said, a big part of it is what Everton valued a player at. I think that, we're not going to go out our way to pay upwards of, I would be surprised if we paid upwards of £5 million for the guy, to be quite honest. But I don't think we should automatically turn around now and say, no, we don't want him back, and whether that be on a loan or a transfer, just because he's had that one poor game. I don't know if you'd agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's only one bad game out of 9 or 10 that he's played so far. I mean, I know the mistakes that he made were quite there for all to see. They were very much highlighted by everyone after the game. But no, I mean he's young. He will learn from these sorts of mistakes and these sorts of experiences. It's a weird one. I wouldn't see us paying 5 million for him. I don't see us paying 5 million for a right back, to be honest with you, because we can't afford to have that in the Scottish League.
Yeah.
I mean, we sold Tierney for 25 million. You don't keep sort of high value fullbacks at the club for too long because they are expendable. You can get replacements. I know we've struggled with Tierney, but you can get able replacements if you spend 2-3 million. You can make a profit off of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's come on to the other loan player very quickly. I think we can both. I think Kenny is kind of split opinion amongst fans since arriving, and I think it just ultimately comes down to what the options are at the end of the day for Celtic and who comes in. I mean, for all we know, somebody wants a quick, small wing back that's got to, like a Frimpong type, like a Lamptey type that we're talking about there. You know, Kenny might not fit the mold of whoever comes in. So, there's still a lot of conversation to have surrounding that. But let's talk about the other one, Managerial, very quickly. For me, once again at the weekend, I believe he's shown why we should pay that 5 million fee if it is an option.
Yeah, I mean, I would be surprised if he's valued at 5 million. I thought it would be valued a lot more than that. I thought
so did that. I was shocked when I seen that figure.
If he is worth 5 million, then that's the sort of box office sort of signing that we would go for now with the current situation and climate that we're in. £5 million probably would be a marquee signing now. And I think it's a pretty safe bet if you can keep him fit and play him in the right system. I feel like there's always been a player that I don't think anyone doubts that there's a hell of a player there. Like, we've seen him against us and we've seen him in many games for us, him coming up trumps and doing well in a game. But it all depends on the valuation again. I mean, you don't know how much Southampton value him, or you don't know if Southampton see him in their plans in the future as well. Because I mean, Fraser Forster went back down and he's playing some games for them this season, so they might want him as a bench option. Yep. I don't think he'll start for Southampton, but they might want him on the bench.
See, the thing is about El Yunusi for me is, like, people are quick to get on his back, but they're so quick to forget that he's one of the ones like Barkas for me who has been so bizarrely mismanaged. It's unbelievable. Like, we started playing El Yunusi shouldn't have been here this season, in all honesty. We started playing a 3-5-2 and it was clear that we were going to keep going with a 3-5-2. So why did we sign El Yunusi? Because he didn't fit that system. And that's where we got all these issues with him not being able to pick up form, because he was playing out of position, because he was getting played up front with somebody in a 3-5-2, and he was getting played in behind somebody. It was never on the left wing. And now it's no surprise to anybody to see him playing some of his best football when he's actually on the left wing. And I honestly struggle to believe that unless Celtic find a player who's young and promising and one that we don't know about, I struggle to believe we'll find anybody that's better than El Yunusi to fill that left-hand side. We had a very good player in Scott Sinclair and we let him go. I think that we've seen the fact, who was his replacement? Lewis Morgan? Was that who the second choice left mid was at the time? Or was El Yunusi here at the time when we let go of? He was, wasn't he?
Yeah.
El Yunusi was here. But our next permanent option for the left-hand side was Lewis Morgan. Was that the plan for us? I think we'll struggle to find somebody better than El Yunusi.
To be fair, I think the long-term plan was the emergence of Mikey Johnson this season.
I agree, of course, aye.
But I think his injuries have played a large part in his sort of
that goes to show you, I completely forgot Johnson existed there, because it feels like we've not been able to see anything.
A lot of Celtic fans forget about Mikey Johnson, because I mean, he did make a couple of appearances last month, but ever since then he's sort of went off the radar. I don't know if he's been on the bench. I've not really noticed.
He was on the bench at the weekend anyway.
No, he was probably watching the game for Yeti as well. That's where all talent is. No, he was supposed to be the next big thing. And it's not really worked out for him as of yet. I mean, he's on a long-term contract, so we obviously do have faith that he'll come good, but these injuries are beginning to pile up. They're a wee bit similar to what happened with Forrest after he made his breakthrough into the team. He had a couple of years where he was just injured all the time. He would get a couple of games, you'd see why he was so good, and then he would get injured again. Personally, I think he needs to bulk up as well. He very lightweight when he's on the ball. I think that's why I like El Yunusi, because he's a bit stockier. He puts himself about more, and he's actually really good in the air. Like it's quite.
I've seen that a weekend.
Aye, that diving header was like shades of Charlie Mulgrew again.
But it's like, I think if that £5 million figure is to be believed, we'd be daft not to pay up. And I hope that he keeps getting played in that left-hand side from now until the end of the season, so that we can now make a kind of sensible judgment on whether or not we do try and bring his services. Well, of course, he might not want to be here next season. We've got to remember that as well, the players' interest. I wouldn't be surprised if he's looking at himself just now and going, fuck, I'm only on loan here. You know, it would not surprise me at all. But if the plans are put in place and a good manager is appointed and there is a chance to bring him back, we should try our best. I think the efforts should be put in place to try and bring El Yunusi, and he can be a vital part towards this rebuild in my eyes, because he's at his prime years now. So he's someone who I think would be very important to keep around if we can. But that kind of covers the weekend. Any final thoughts you want to bring in about the Derby game, Ryan? Anything that you feel like you've not been able to mention? Of course, we've kind of skimmed over the Edouard dives, but I think we've let the talking be done for that on social media.
There's plenty of talking that. You can let Super Scoreboard do all of that. They seem to sensationalise all that kind of stuff. I think another thing about El Yunusi, he was supposed to be playing in the left wing. I mean, Forrest was supposed to play in the right wing, but the fact that he's been out for so long, we don't really have another replacement in terms of like a natural right winger. So El Yunusi's been kind of hamstrung in that position. Like he's had to sort of accommodate elsewhere in order to fit in the team, and that can't help him. I mean, if a player's not playing in his right position, then his performances are going to struggle. They're going to drop. So, I mean, it'd be nice to see him getting played in his proper position till the end of the season. Maybe with Forrest on the other side.
Yep, that's what I hope. That's what I'm hoping for now. Good thing is we've got 2 weeks to kind of recharge and get that to happen, which we'll come on to after we talk about this. It's time to move on to. I mean, we'll talk about the man who I've always called the Paul McStay of my era, the kind of the ever-present captain of the team, who is solidified himself as one of the greats in Celtic Football Club. He's one of the greatest players that I think we'll ever see, and I honestly don't believe in my lifetime I will see a better captain. Now, I think my dad, for example, he had Billy McNeil. There was never going to be a captain better than Billy McNeil. People just shortly after my dad, they had the likes of kind of McGrain, and even after that, there was Dalglish's, there was McStay's, there was everybody who's kind of. But Scott Brown, a guy who's won, I think it's something like over 19% of all Celtic's trophies. I honestly don't believe that there will be a captain better or more significant anyway than Scott Brown in my time as a Celtic supporter. Unless we go and lift the European Cup again somehow. But it looks as though he could be on the way out. Now, the thing is, it's kind of taken a twist and a turn since the news broke last night in between us filming, because Stephen Glass has been announced as the Aberdeen manager now, but there has been no word whatsoever in regards to Scott Brown being the assistant. He is still the favourite. Apparently, it still is on the cards and most likely will happen. It is one of those ones, if it is going to happen, when does it happen? Because if Stephen Glass now takes the job till the end of the season, it's not like Brown can go and start doing a job there because he's under contract with Celtic, so he wouldn't work till next season. But we'll talk about, we'll kind of talk in the context and the mindset that it is going to happen, because it seems that Keith Jackson and the Daily Record are pretty set on it happening. So we'll talk about it like that. So, Ryan, you've been very, 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 very vocal about your want for change and a culture change and such next season. And alongside that, you've been very vocal with the departure of Scott Brown. Now I'll give you your platform to speak to that. I don't mean to make that sound like you're like, get out the fucking door, Brown, but you know what I mean? You can do better justice than me. On you go. Your thoughts towards the potential departure of Scott Brown this summer.
No, but I think you've got to start off by saying that it will be a massive loss when we lose Scott Brown. Scott Brown's a leader. He's kind of all that we've ever known in terms of younger Celtic fans. I mean, I can remember McManus and.
That's the thing. Look, you're 23, 24 now. I don't want to insult your age. You're 23. I'm 21, and still that's quite a long time to be honest. But he's still like the only captain we've really known. I do remember McManus a bit. But Brown has been the ever present.
It's always really been. I mean, ever since I've been a season ticket holder, it's always been Scott Brown. I think maybe Stephen McManus a little bit because I was in the Mowbray season. I'm not sure if it was McManus for a couple of.
I think McManus left at the start of Mowbray's tenure. So
he went to Middlesbrough to join Gordon Strachan. So it might have been. That might have been the time where they changed it around. It might have been.
I think that was a transitional period between Brown getting it and then McManus leaving it. But anyway, continue what you were saying.
But yeah, it's all we've ever known, really. Scott Brown as captain of Celtic, 14 years. I mean, Henrik stayed for 7 years. Scott Brown's been there double that. Mm-hmm. It's mental to think that. If Scott Brown was to be let's just say, for example, a team, he'd be the third most successful team in Scottish history.
That's mad.
In terms of his honours on his own.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's absolutely incredible. He's been a captain of a dynasty, almost, you could say. Well, it has been a dynasty.
And I know there's Rangers fans who love to say, he's benefited off the kind of demise of it. Of course he has. In terms of accomplishments and trophies, yes, of course. He's won probably far more trophies than what he should have if Rangers didn't go down in 2012 or whatever. But you can't take that away from anything that Brown has accomplished as a football player, and in terms of how good a football player and a leader that he is. Rangers' demise has nothing to do with the importance and the influence of Scott Brown as a player and his ability as a player, because people are quick to write that off all the time, which is just nonsense. But I keep going, Ryan.
Yeah, I feel like there has been a lot of outpouring on social media saying this is a disgraceful thing to happen. Like, this shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't be letting this happen. I mean, in some ways, yes, it is bad that we're letting go of another leader in the team, another sort of mainstay. But at the same time, it's a clean break. It's the potential to truly rebuild. Like, it could be a half rebuild that Brown's still part of it in terms of a player, coach, or it could be a full rebuild where this is a completely new era, a completely new time for Celtic, where a new captain could be made, whether that be McGregor or a younger player that will take the role over the next couple of years. It'll be interesting to see what happens, really. I think it's good for Brown as well that he goes and cuts his teeth somewhere else. In this case, if it's Aberdeen, I mean, I don't know how Aberdeen are feeling towards him going there.
Apparently, from what I've heard, there's a lot of Aberdeen fans who aren't too happy.
A lot of people aren't happy because of the whole Tonev thing that happened 7-8 years ago.
Yeah, of course.
During the whole thing, which is a bit dodgy considering all the stuff that's happened
over the past few days. Yeah, of course.
He was a terrible player as well.
Let's not get started on him, man. That's a video in itself.
Awful. It was a dialer signing. Well, it wasn't a dialer signing, but it was. No, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, best wishes go to him if he does decide to leave, and he'll always be a legend at Celtic. But this is an opportunity for us to really embrace change and embrace a different culture, and I think we should take it with both hands.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard now to balance that. That's sort of like the 50-50 now is, and I can never place myself on a side, because one part I have been screaming all season about how we need to rebuild, we need to move away. We're going to have to accept that there will be change, and we're going to have to be patient with change. So with Scott Brown leaving, that kind of filters in nicely with the whole part. I'm like, well, if we're talking about losing another leader, we knew we had to be patient anyway. It was always going to be tough. It was never going to be instant success. But then there is that 50% now that's like, what there's too much change. There's like doing too many things at the once. Keep a bit of consistency between what we have now and what we have moving forward. Someone who has been there and they know the club and has a kind of grip on the players and just the club in general. Like, Scott Brown will have a lot more influence than what we actually know and what happens with Celtic. I would suggest. I think that Scott Brown is probably very instrumental as to how things work, both on the training ground, on the pitch, of course, but also behind the scenes. But there is that kind of 50-50 now. Too much change. Should we let him go? Should we try and keep him for one more year so we do have that little bit of continuity in the system? But then there is, and I understand where you're coming from, Ryan, there is that kind of, there's that side that's like, well, what if we do keep him around and then he is too much involved next season and we start to see the same issues and we then just going to revert back to the same old, Brown shouldn't be in the team, Brown shouldn't be doing this. From my understanding, Brown wouldn't be that much involved in playing next season. But then again, we all thought that when Sorrell broke into the team, and then we've cried every week when Brown has been starting over Sorrell. So where do you draw that line?
Very difficult, because Brown himself might feel that he can play 50, 60 games a season.
Yeah. That's the thing. I'm sorry to cut you off here, Ryan. I keep going in a second. I'm very sorry to cut you off. That was a very interesting article I was reading actually in the papers in the weekend. It was like they were talking about the complexion between Alan McGregor and Scott Brown. McGregor knows if he signs on for another year, he'll be starting for Rangers, whereas if Brown stays on for another year at Celtic, I think it might have actually been Keith Jackson who wrote the article. I think it was. He was saying it. I think he makes a very valid point. There's no chance Brown's going to sit there and say, I'm not being involved. That's not Scott Brown. Scott Brown very much wants to have a hands-on approach. He wants to do something. He's not going to sit and watch from the bench every week.
I know. I wouldn't have been against him having a sort of James Milner role at Liverpool, coming on when maybe you need the defence showed up, or, well, not defence, but, sitting in front of the defence, trying to put out fires that are coming your way. No, he couldn't be a starter next season. I mean, in terms of a rebuild, if he was to survive a rebuild and be a first pick, that would give off all sorts of wrong messages when we're supposed to be bringing through the next crop now.
Yep.
Like, realistically, Sorrell should be starting most games next season. But my worry is that they brought in Sorrell because the fans were begging and begging and begging for it, not that they'd planned to bring him in anyway. They kind of brought him in as a sort of chance, and then they had to stick with it because he played well. Like, maybe that wasn't the plan. Maybe it was just by chance that he got in the team, because it doesn't look as if he's favoured now again.
No, it does not. It does not. When was the last time? I think he's had like one start in the last 5 or 6 or something.
Was his last start? I don't even know when his last start. You see, I should know this but I don't really look at the teams as much anymore.
Exactly. It's especially when you're on the last time he started would have been at least 3 weeks ago, so it's hard to keep that in mind when it was. But I hear what you're saying about maybe Sorrell's introduction to the squad hasn't been quite what was intended. I get what you're trying to aim at.
Yeah. Aye, it just seems as if by chance. It seems as if we chucked Turnbull in because the plan was for Turnbull to be a first team player, but maybe not Sorrell. It just seems that the two of them work together, and we'll just go with that until we drop points, and then we bring Brown back in. That seems to be what's happened, which is a nightmare. But I thought Sorrell was quite good in the last Celtic Rangers game, so I mean he's not that bad. He wasn't like a disaster in any of his games. I mean, I think the excuse that Lennon made was that he was fatigued, but I think he was just looking for an excuse to bring Brown back in.
So that kind of leads me on to, so I'm more on the side, I must admit, and I'm so 50-50 on it. I think the biggest thing that annoys me, and I'll be generally honest, the biggest thing that annoys me is the fact I'm not getting to say fucking farewell. Like, the fact that he could leave without having a full state. This is a guy who should be getting a speech in the middle of the park with fucking flowers thrown on and a lap of honour around it. This should be one of the biggest and most emotional days to be a Celtic fan, watching Scott Brown play his last game at Celtic Park. As you said, he's been here 14 years. That is incredible service. And he's stuck by the clubs through thick and thin and through numerous managerial changes. A guy who's won Player of the Year on 2 occasions, both at very opposite ends of his career, to show the longevity the guy has had. And also, he's been through a lot personally with the injuries and such. And of course, some tragic moments in his life. Celtic's been there for him. He's been there for Celtic. He's someone who deserves the biggest amounts of respect, the biggest. So that's the thing that saddens me the most. The fact that there is that thought there that we won't be able to say farewell. But I think I sway more towards the side of I kind of want him to stay just for that one more season. And it's so hard to pick a side and whether he should or shouldn't stay. I think either way I'm going to feel the same. And I don't know. It's just, I feel like, how do you replace Scott Brown? And where does that even start? In terms, not just in terms of an on the pitch captain, but in terms of personality, how do you actually get that kind of Scott Brown personality there again? Is it by going out and recruiting a leader, or is it by just breeding a new leader? Say breeding as if we're going to get some sort of Neil Lennon and some just ran is it just by bringing through our own sort of new leader? I don't know. I feel like replacing Scott Brown is going to be the most, and I've been on side with this for since Henrik Larsson, the most incredibly difficult person to replace at Celtic. You know what I mean?
That's what worries me, because if we're getting rid of all these leaders in terms of like prominent figures at the club,
I know what you're going to say here.
Lennon was a leader.
I know what you're going to say
Scott
here.
Brown was a leader. who would we bring in that would be a leader that would take Scott Brown's place? And I'm putting everything together, and I don't want it to be that, but I mean, in terms of the way the board work, and you know how the board work, and you know that Dermot Desmond's a big fan of Roy Keane. So if you put 2 and 2 together, it just looks like it would make sense for them. Not that it would make sense in terms of a rebuild, but I don't want to think about that, and I don't want to put that in the open too much, even though I did tweet about it earlier.
You're sitting there giving that both fucking ideas, you're a jinx.
I know. I mean, see, to be fair, if they're listening to me,
Christ.
Well, obviously they're not listening to me.
Well, if we were listening to any of us, we'd have won the league this year.
Kieran Wald would have got an unbeaten run or something.
Exactly, He would have been like, there would be banners up at Celtic Park, like a revolutionary leader, like just pure old school style 1950s wartime leader vibe posters around Celtic Park of Kieran Wald. That's the kind of dictatorship that man wants. No, but I just feel like it's just so. That's the only reason I don't want to go. And I completely understand, because I know you're more on the side of like, well, we want to change. This has changed. And I think that's very justifiable. I don't think you can blame anybody for looking at it like that. I would never for a moment blame you for thinking like that. But for me, it's just like, I am so worried that we don't replace him and we do struggle for that hold on the team next year. Yeah. And then we start to see it trickle through, especially in big games. You know what I mean?
That is a worry. Yeah, definitely. It's going to be almost impossible to replace Scott Brown, because Scott Brown has put in the years. He's got the reputation. He's got the love of the fans. You put all that together. You can't replace that in a day. Like Rome wasn't built in a day. Replacing Bruni wasn't built in a day or whatever. That was a terrible analogy.
No, keep going, mate. I'm on edge. I'm just about to start greeting, so
time to say goodbye. Put that on repeat. Put that on your playlist.
It's just like it's just too much.
I know it's actually quite sad when you think about it, especially. Yep. But I think people would have been more open to the idea of Scott Brown going if we'd have won the league this season.
I feel like absolutely. I think so. It's like one of those ones that we talked about earlier. When you look at and you try to analyse a game, all of a sudden becomes very different whether or not you're the team that's top of the table or not.
Yep, absolutely. It would be very difficult to replace him, and that's why I don't want Celtic to be thinking in that way, in sort of the Roy Keane sort of way, in terms of replacing a captain on the pitch with a sort of captain off the pitch in terms of a head coach, which would be quite worrying. I mean, it would be a backwards appointment, to be fair, but let's not think about that too much.
No, let's not. Let's try and keep Roy Keane as far off the mind as possible. Look, we've actually been doing incredible here. We've been having long conversations today. I'm enjoying this. This isn't bad for having only two of us on.
I'm usually waiting for Kieran to come in.
I know that's the difficult part, isn't it? Because I'm usually, of course, in the role of host, and I'm just kind of asking the questions, and I'll chip in every now and then. But now I'm like, right, I need to proper go for it. But I've enjoyed it. It's been very, very good. It just gives you a good indication of how we go in future episodes if we only have two again. But I think that kind of covers everything so far on Scott Brown. Look, at the end of the day, we could generally be having this conversation for absolutely fuck all, because he could still be here next season. There is no guarantee he is gone yet. And if there is going to be a guarantee, I think it will be over the next, you'd imagine, the next kind of couple of days.
That's the thing. Adam Lynch was making loads of compilation videos of Tom Rogic, time to say goodbye and all that, and he's still here. So,
shout out to Adam.
Yeah, brilliant videos. Terrible on a Sunday.
Yeah, we all thought that Rogic was away, for example, and he wasn't. I know Brown's a bit different. I don't think Rogic would get the same mainstream Keith Jackson articles wrote about him, but we all thought he was gone, and he wasn't. Look, we'll see what happens. He's just a. I mean, I've always said it, and I'll not let any English fan tell me different, because it's the same. Rangers have had captains who are in the exact same boat, but Scott Brown for me is one of the best captains in modern British football history. You know, across both Scotland and England. I don't look at any teams in England right now and see a captain like Scott Brown. There's no one for me. Of course, they're good captains. They're very good captains, but there's none like Scott Brown. He's built different. He's a different sort of player.
I would say the likes of him aren't getting produced as much as they were.
No, exactly. It's kind of like a dying breed.
Maybe that's just a sign of the times, the way football is. I mean, you see different positions getting captaincies. I mean, the Norwegian national team now has Martin Odegaard as their captain.
Who's still a baby in terms of football, really. But you know, it's like a dying breed, isn't it?
I know. I mean, the sort of players that Scott Brown is, the sort of player that he is, is sort of dying out as well. That sort of I don't really want to call him a hard man because he's so much better than that.
He is. People are quick, and I've always hated that. People are very quick to jump in and say, "Oh, he's just a wee hard." Like, people forget that throughout his entire career, technically, has been a very good footballer. I feel like he's not been quite that same technical level since he's been big injuries in 2015-ish time. But technically a very good player. The reason he got his move to Celtic, came in, he was playing on the right-hand side a lot, played in the middle, both going forward and defensively, was very solid. Then he changed to a completely different role where he's been kind of the marshal of the team in the middle of the park for a long time. And he's done it so well, and he's got impressive statistics, and of course, in domestic football and European football that suggests how good a player he is. And because he isn't fancy, because he isn't full of flair, people think he's just a very average footballer. He's not. He's very intelligent. I've not seen a lot of players who have the same sort of mindset as him, but not just in terms of their personality, in terms of how they play football. A very smart footballer, and that reflects in the way the rest of the team play.
Yeah, absolutely. Criminally underrated. I mean, he's the sort of player that you notice when he isn't in the team a lot of the time, rather than when he is in the team, and that's a big problem for us. I mean, even in games this season when he hasn't played, there's a couple of times I've looked to my dad and said we could do with Scott Brown for the last 20-30 minutes in this game. He's just one of those players.
Mind that happened, right enough. Like, mind when Sorrow and Turnbull first came into the team and Brown was dropped for like the first couple of games, and then I think he came off the bench for 10-20 minutes and there was such a change because Brown was introduced to the team. People very much forget the influence he can have on a football team.
Absolutely. He was pivotal for a number of years. I mean, to get to the age of 36 and still be playing first team football in that sort of role, I think that role is the most difficult to be an aging player in, a sort of box to box midfielder. Maybe not box to box, actually, but more of a holding midfielder. Like your sort of Fernandinho, Rodri role, Fabinho as well. I'm not comparing them again, but I'm just thinking some of the prominent names in football
that play that role.
To still be doing it at 36 is really just a
big testament. Massive.
Considering 4 or 5 years ago he was getting written off under Dyler. The fact that he managed another 5 years at Celtic after it, I mean, he's not left obviously, but if the reports are anything to go by, he will go. I mean, that's impressive in itself because he looked done. He looked completely done under Dyler.
Exactly, and that's you know, when people do try and write him off as being not this great player and all this was a guy that was done, but it was also a guy who was revitalised and very much believed in by what is now touted as one of the best managers in England, if not Europe, and Brendan Rodgers. So it just goes to show you, he's not just a bum, he's not just fortunate, he's not lucky to keep his place. A fantastic footballer, and I think that any level-headed fan across both sides of the divide will be first to admit that. And then beyond that, there should be, of course, a very much an acknowledgement of how good a player he is. We'll finish up there with the Scott Brown chat. We'll see where that goes. I'm sure that's a story that might have many twists in the tail between now and the end of the season. We'll wait and see what happens now that Stephen Glass is, of course, the Aberdeen manager. And there goes my camera again. You can tell it's a long one when the camera goes off twice, right? Christ. So, finally, we'll move on and very quickly fire through the Twitter questions. I'm telling you, I know I've already said it. We've done well for the 2 years. We've spoken great depth. We'll go on to the Twitter questions very quickly to end off the show. Of course, if you do want to get involved with the podcast and get your points in, then make sure to follow the Twitter account over at Sellik Podcast. That's SELLIK podcast on Twitter, and you can get your questions in there. Also, one day me and Ryan will make the effort to sit down and have a Clyde One Super Scoreboard phone in. We can hear you first, Dan.
Ever since I heard the Four Tims phone in after Lennon was announced that he was going, it was just brilliant. I was actually on that.
Yeah, you were on that, that's right. Yeah, because I was when you betrayed us. It was good to hear you. It was good to hear you and Tony having a laugh. I do love a bit of Tony. Right, okay, so let's move on to the questions. I mean, Aaron's asked, will Scott Brown ever be replaced? We've kind of covered that, so I'll send you back to that point there. So that's a good one, actually, from Matthew Duff. Matthew asks, with the news of Scott Brown leaving the club, the next Celtic captain has surely got to be Stephen Welsh, he says. Matthew Duff, a very big believer in Stephen Welsh. I'm yet to get fully on the Welsh wagon, if you like. I'm still kind of apprehensive. I still think that we could probably invest quite a bit of time and money into the centre halves. On paper, the replacement is surely got to be Callum McGregor, though I think you would agree, Ryan.
Yeah, I think he's a shoe-in to be the next captain, purely because he's been taking a lot of the press conferences as well.
He's basically been the captain this season, man.
I know. You think about it, with all the games that Brown has not played or he's not started, it's been Callum McGregor. I mean, I know people are like, oh, he doesn't have the same influence. And maybe he doesn't, but different players react to having the captaincy in different ways. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just a changing of the game. Your captain doesn't have to be the loudest man on the pitch anymore.
Yep. There can be somebody who's just very tactically inept, or no, not inept, apt. It can be not tactically inept. You don't want that. That's Neil Lennon. It can be somebody who's just very tactically wise with the game, or I mean, I'm not a big fan of the whole giving the best player the armband, but that seems to be the way a lot of teams are going now. I mean, a lot of people aren't captain. I don't think for a second that Lionel Messi should be a captain, but he is. I think Lionel Messi's better without the armband. I think he's shown that he's not so much the audible leader. But that's it. Football, you don't really need an audible leader now. If it was up to me, my first choice, to be honest, would be Christopher Ajer. If it meant keeping him around, but I think we're kind of beyond that now, aren't we?
Yeah, it's a shame too, because I really want him to stay for another season. But at the same time, I'm looking beyond Celtic a wee bit, and I'm like, I don't want his progress to be stunted.
Yeah.
Like, I want him to have a good career, because he's never down the tools at all, despite what people say that he potentially was one of the ones that downed the tools. He's never shown it anyway.
Yep. Not for a second.
If he has down the tools this season, then I'd like to see him when he doesn't down the tools.
I know, exactly. Because if he doesn't down the tools, then he's probably in line to being a fucking Van Dijk replacement, man. Because he's been brilliant this season. On just to link it back to that note about Stephen Welsh, I'm not denying that there's probably a spot in the future for someone like Welsh, if not Welsh himself, to be captain of the club. I have been very much more and more impressed every week that I've watched Stephen Welsh. I think that he seems to get better, and I seem to grow more confident in him. But I still just have this sort of problem in believing that he is going to be a starting centre half for Celtic. I just can't buy it yet. And I think it's just probably because, this is a rebuild and we should be looking. It's just, I don't know. It's weird. I think you understand what I'm trying to say, Ryan.
Yeah. I mean, I would kind of sort of like compare it to the sort of Owen O'Connell. Remember when Owen O'Connell came in with Brendan Rodgers? He was there, but we never really considered him as a first team player. He'd do a job, but he's not the long-term solution. I mean, we got
Ajer the topper against Leicester.
He certainly did. He's a good lad, that Owen O'Connell. I quite liked him too. I mean,
I liked him as well.
He obviously just couldn't keep it up, or maybe Brendan Rodgers didn't fancy him as much as his career progressed at Celtic. But I mean, I do think we could go out and do better. I know we will need to rely a lot more on our development squad and our sort of under-23s or our under-20s or whatever they're called.
Yep.
But I think there are better options. Maybe we've already signed a better option.
Yeah, Liam Shaw. I want to be just very, as much as I want to believe, and I think we should, and we really should believe in our younger players and give these guys chances, and Steve Welsh is getting that chance. I'm just on the side, and I think we should all be very cautious of putting so much faith in someone who's came in purely off the back of Celtic having their worst centre half that they've ever signed, where things could only get better when we've still not been great, and ultimately wasn't that great for Greenock Morton on loan. I think we should just be very cautious in what we choose to be a starting centre half, because ultimately, if that window shuts and you're left with Welsh starting at centre half next season, we could be facing a lot more of the same issues, because our centre halves are far off the mark, bar Ajer at the minute, far off the mark. So I think we just need to be very, very cautious. And that's not me taking anything away from Stephen Welsh. I would just say don't put your eggs all in the one basket as of right now. So Tommy Boy asks, going into next season, potentially without Bruni, do you think we need to buy someone, or do we have a player waiting to step up? So would you rather Sorrow or Shaw, or do you think we need to spend money, Ryan?
In terms of the holding midfielder?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to think that Sorrow has what it takes, but I think we need another holding midfielder anyway.
Yeah, because it's not that, it's kind of one in, one out, innit? Like, Brown will be leaving, so surely somebody does have to come in.
I feel like that would have been a good I feel like Ben Pearson would have been a good replacement, the boy that went to Bournemouth.
Yeah, that's right. Aye.
The way people were talking about him down south made me think he could be the next sort of Brown-like figure at the club, because he was getting so highly rated.
Mm-hmm.
Then Bournemouth come in and get him. I think they signed him permanently, didn't they? They didn't even get him on a free contract because he went
so.
there.
Aye, he did. Aye, you're spot on. He did.
Aye, he's got like a 75 card on FIFA or something. I remember looking at that a couple of months ago.
That's it. We only rate players off FIFA ratings here, yeah.
It's always terrible when you get a new signing and they're like a silver or something. You're like, what are we doing with our scouting? It doesn't help me for my squad or anything. It's not as Celtic players anyway.
As long as I'm good in Football Manager, that does me.
That's that. We'll take those ratings with more substance or whatever.
Aye.
So I think we need to go out and sign a replacement, definitely. I mean, Liam Shaw could be the answer in a couple of years, maybe. I mean, I don't even know if he'll come into the starting lineup or the starting squad, or he'll start off with the development.
I mean, if you're going to line him up against people like O'Connell and such, there's absolutely no chance he's going to be in the starting lineup, is there?
No, I know he'll be out playing for Queen's Park second half of the season.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't expect this.
No, he probably did not.
He probably thought he could probably get in the team and play, because he was quite versatile for Bolton. Like, he was playing left back, full back.
Yeah, that's right, centre mid.
Yep. I thought he would get games last season, so the fact that he didn't get any game time at all was quite concerning.
Mm-hmm.
He could be someone that comes in the rebuild, and we could see maybe the best of him, or any of them for that matter. But we'll see what happens.
Yep. Okay. Nice. Like that. Yeah, I think it's probably you do need to sign somebody. I've been a big fan of Sorrow and a very big advocate of Sorrow since coming into the team, and I do want to see his progression develop. But I think that the thing that you need to replace most is that kind of their quality. It's there just now, not in a few years, and that's what Sorrow still has. So even if it is to start games or not, I think we still need to spend a bit of money just to make sure that things are okay. Okay, so favourite Scott Brown moment, says Decky. His underrated one that he says is going steaming and munching a kebab on the street before dishing out a man of the match performance in the League Cup final a few days later. I think everybody's favourite Brown moment is the one that's like right behind me, potentially. I think that's most people's. But if I was to go and say mine personally, one that's been shown a lot over the past 24 hours, because I was there, and it was the start of a very good week for me, because it was Benidorm the next day. It was him winning the league at Rugby Park. What a moment. I
mean, that was the chant. Scott Brown won the league at Rugby Park. That was iconic, the way he done it. Brendan Rodgers was still in charge then, wasn't he?
I think that was his second last league game in charge, maybe.
Aye. Sorry, I'm coughing.
You got that old Rona there, Ryan. Aye. So you got the virus, eh?
You talking too much. Let me actually get some water. Totally iconic moment. Brendan Rodgers' second last game in charge of Celtic. I think he took charge of Motherwell with the whole.
I think it went, if I remember rightly, because it was the greatest week of my life. We went to Kilmarnock on the Sunday. Seen them win the league. Oh, well, not technically win the league, but basically win the league. We then flew out to Benidorm so the Monday morning, and then done Benidorm Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Went to the game on Thursday, came back on the Friday. And then I think he managed against Motherwell on the following Sunday, and then the Tuesday following, Rodgers was gone.
Yeah,
what a whirlwind day a week.
8 in a row, was it?
That would have been 8. That would have been 8. Yep.
Oh, we were in dreamland, because he scuffs the shot too, and
it takes out a wee bit of deflection, does it not?
Aye, it's a wee deflection and goes in. I remember the crowd just goes mental, absolutely mental. I thought the Hamilton one, to a lesser extent, the Hamilton last minute winner was magic as well, because the whole stadium was sort of deflated.
I wasn't there that night.
No,
I was working. I still remember, like, just one of the off the cuff podcast stories. I was working, and I remember seeing the score was 1-1, wasn't it? And Hamilton just scored, made it 1-1, and I was in the bakery at the time, because that's where I worked. I worked in the bakery, and I was fucking raging, absolutely raging, because we knew it was going to be a tough title to win. I was absolutely raging. So I was like, fuck this. I stormed out to go and have a fag out in the smoking area. And obviously I walked directly across to Celtic Park. So the minute I get outside and spark up my fag, all you hear is like the crowd going mental, and I pulled out my phone looking, because I thought it was done, man. I pulled out my phone and there you go, Brown had scored. So that's another one, as you said, a very iconic moment.
So many iconic moments for an iconic captain, really. Second best in our history, I would say. and he'll be sorely missed.
Yep. Spot on, Ryan. You put that nicely there. This question I'm not going to use for us to answer. I'm going to use this one to advertise next week's show. So we've got, where is it? I've lost it already. I had it set up there. I was going to, there we go. Greg asks, must we sign a new keeper or can we afford to give Barkas another chance under a new manager? So that kind of links in nicely. Of course, Celtic are off duty for the next couple of weeks. Scottish international duty will be up and running starting now, actually. They're all in training. We're playing Thursday night, which means there's no Celtic talk in terms of on the pitch for quite a while. So next week I'm going to gather Ryan and whoever else from the podcast to sit down and we're going to look through the entire Celtic squad for a special edition of the podcast, and each of us voice an opinion on every player and where they belong in the squad. Should we keep them? Should we move them on? Are they important? Are they a squad player? Are they for the future? We're going to talk about it all. I know it's been kind of covered both on my channel before. I kind of done the who should be part of a rebuild, but this will be more in depth and with more opinions. And I know Paul from Celtic Fans TV's done a little take on that as well. But it's something that I feel like with 3 or 4 opinions on, we can really make an intriguing podcast in terms of debate and discussion. So I'll save the Barcast chat for that next week. Make sure to check that out then. I'll go through a couple more questions just so we can get to the end of today's show, because I've been talking for a long time and my mouth is as dry as anything. John F. Kennedy is back. JFK, a regular watcher of the show and a regular contributor in these comment sections. His question: if you were offered the following, would you take it? John Kennedy gets the job with Sean Maloney and Alan Stubbs as first team coaches after we win our 5 split games, including at Ibrox, and also beat Rangers in the Scottish Cup final. Would you take that? John Kennedy, Sean Maloney and Alan Stubbs, Ryan?
I wouldn't be renewing my season ticket if that was the case.
Very nicely put there.
Because what has Stubbs done since Hibs, in all honesty?
He's sacked by Rotherham, sacked by St Mirren, and what was one of the worst Premiership manager reigns of all time. And then a bit of shit punditry, it seems.
But I feel like Sean Maloney would be of a superior rank to John Kennedy if he was to come in.
I know, you'd feel like Maloney should be in charge.
That's Sean Kennedy, though.
Sean Kennedy.
I heard it in my head for some reason, though. That's weird. No, if it was Sean Maloney with John Kennedy, I still don't want that.
Nah, I feel like, if Maloney's to come in, it's either Maloney and someone or Martinez and Maloney. It's not Maloney and Kennedy at the top of the tree for me. No, I think you've got a little bit of change. Look, it's certainly been worse suggestions. But I don't quite get where the Alan Stubbs comes from in a sense. I don't think he should be. Keep him in the past to paradise if you're that ambitious, I suppose.
I was going to say the exact same thing. That's crazy.
Keep him there. And then finally, to end off the questions today, we've not spoke about him in a couple of weeks, Ryan. I know you're dying to say something. So, what the thoughts on where the Enzo Maresca rumour's going? Yeah, are you starting to believe a bit more that it's going to happen?
I think if Fergal Harkin comes in, then if you put 2 and 2 together, I think Maresca will be the head coach. I mean, I know you can't really take odds too much, but he is odds-on favourite now, along with Kennedy. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm repping the sort of Italian makes today with Armani, sort of like subliminal messages.
Hope you're having pasta for your dinner.
Or pasta pep, yep.
Right. I hope that's getting right in the fucking pot.
I'll need to trademark pasta pep actually, because I need to make some dosh off of that.
Next thing you know, as soon as he's announced manager, you'll start the podcast with a jumper on pasta pep.
I know. Do you know what? I think he's the best sort of option in terms of all the options that have been discussed, apart from maybe Jesse Marsh.
Sorry, where's Eddie Howe here?
He's a bit unrealistic, and I don't even think he perfectly fits anymore.
It's mad how Eddie Howe's name has just kind of like died. In terms of it looks certain that he'll end up getting a Newcastle job now, I think. But it's just he's not had a link with Celtic in weeks or even months now. And that saddens me because he's still my number one choice.
He would be a good manager for us, but I think another thing you need to take into account is that he would be looking at the job as a sort of stepping stone, much like Brendan Rodgers did. So he couldn't. Yeah,
but do you not see that with Maresca to an extent? Do you not think?
But he'll have more time to sort of make his name at Celtic, whereas Eddie Howe's already got that name. He just needs to
like Rodgers already did. Yeah, I get you. Well, look, there's going to be a lot of time to discuss the managerial stuff as more rumours come out. It seems like as we get closer, we also get further away, but we're expecting this news perhaps this week on the director of football situation, and we're expecting a bit more probably in terms of managers too. So don't worry, we'll come and talk to you in the podcast whenever we can. But as for today, I feel that leaves us at a nice point to wrap her up. Ryan, I feel like that's a lot of speaking today for the two of us. I tell you what, we've not done too bad for just the pair of us, huh?
No, just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Get that on.
There you go. I'll go and listen to. I'll go and listen to Two of Us by the Beatles. I'll take that one. I prefer that one.
Islands in the Stream.
Islands in the Stream. As long as I'm Kenny, you can be Dolly, mate.
That's fine by me.
Lads, if you've enjoyed listening to the show today on Spotify, make sure to do, as I always say every week, make sure to drop a follow on the platform. Make sure to share it out on social media. Get as many people listening as possible. Make sure to go and follow, of course, at the Sellik Podcast. At Sellik Podcast. If you've been listening on YouTube, then the same thing as every other video. Like, subscribe, share it out. Get as many people as possible. Get us the recommended. And just make sure you do all of that. Anyway, that about does it. Thank you, lads. Thank you, Ryan, for joining me. And we'll see you all next time.